What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to talk about the top 10 surprising sales I saw last week. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I appreciate all the comments and the likes and subscriptions. Again, it really makes the videos worthwhile to make. So if you haven't watched one of these before, what I do is I go over the weekly Heritage comic auction. So I watch that every week. I monitor a bunch of books, usually 200 plus books per week. I price those books out and I estimate what I think their current value is. I also keep track of their highs, and then I look at 5 books that surprise me on the high end, as well as 5 books that surprise me on the low end. So I take a little bit different approach than what some other kind of like top 10 type lists do, and so that gives you an idea of some of those big sales, as well as some of the discounted sales that happen, and maybe some trends that are working on the downside. But sometimes they're just, people got great deals. So with that, let's get into these top 10 surprising sales. All right, so number 10, this was a high sale. This was Werewolf by Night number 32 with a CGC 9.0 that sold for $6,600. Now, if you're not familiar with this book, it's really been out there. It's been hot lately, or not just lately, for like a year. This is the first appearance of Moon Knight, and he's got this MCU show that's coming out. It looks like it should be fun. I expect this book to continue to spike at least into the first main trailer. After that, you can never really tell. Usually trailers are the peaks, but TV shows tend to be a little different than movies. You might see some continued strength if the show is really good. It shows a lot of promise, gets a lot of positive feedback. Now, this wasn't a record, but this was a very strong sale compared to what I've seen recently, because surprisingly, we had that little teaser trailer come out. Since then, I've kind of seen some weakness in this book, and this is really when you'd expect you'd see a little more strength. And so this was a surprising sale to the high side, even though it wasn't a record. I had estimated the price of this book at $5,500. This was 20% above my estimate. The record was actually $7,200 from June of this year. But the crazy thing is that just on December 6th, just a few days ago, there was a sale of a 9.0 for $9,500. This was a new record by 32%. So not only was this $6,600 sale a surprise on the high end, we had another sale outside of Heritage. I believe this was eBay. I did not check which one it was through GPA, but it's a $9,500 sale. And the $6,600 sale was a White Pages book, so it's not like you had some, this 9,500 was white pages, the other one was off white to white, and there was something like that. And so this was a huge monster sale that happened after the fact as well. So this just goes to show you, this is what I've been talking about. When you see these discounted prices on books, when it's a book that you don't think should have gone down, because we saw earlier this year that everything went up. In that April-May timeframe, just every single key, most books just went way up in price. And some of them deserved to go up, some of them didn't. But then as we went through the summer, as kind of, I think the market got a little exhausted, effectively everything dropped. And so that then took down the books that should have gone up, along with the books that shouldn't have. And so now we're starting to see those books that deserve to be at higher prices start to turn back up again, and this is one of those examples. So when you see a book that looks like it hit some peak earlier this year and it's come down a bunch, and it's got a movie coming out, a show coming out, some spec behind it, doesn't seem like it deserved to drop, that's the time to pick up those books. That's why I've been saying around that 30% down point, that's where I've been picking up books like that. Now, I also like to talk about alternatives for these books, because some of these are just so expensive. And in this case, a great alternative is just one issue later in Werewolf by Night number 33. So this is the second appearance of Moon Knight. He's also on the cover with Werewolf by Night. It's a little tougher book in high grade because it's got a very dark cover, especially along the edges. And this one, it's about 10 times less. That's what I talk about with the difference between second appearances and first appearances. Usually you see a price reduction of about 10 times, and that's the same here. We had a 9.0 that sold for $600 on November 29th and $650 on November 13th. So again, about 10 times less than that $6,600 sale. and even more with that 9,500. So that could tell you that maybe that issue 33 is a little undervalued right now, and you could possibly expect that book to move up. So sometimes the first appearance will move first, and that's when you want to act on the second appearance because it will trail it, it will come up with it as well. All right, now number 9, and this is a low sale. This is Fantastic Four, number 48, with a CGC 8.5 that sold for $7,200. Now, this is a book I'd love to get a nicer copy of this book. I have a nice copy of 49. I do not have a very nice copy of 48, but this is the first appearance of Silver Surfer, first cameo appearance of Galactus. This is one of the books that spiked a ton earlier this year with speculation that we would ultimately see these characters in the MCU. Now, this is one that I feel a little different about. So, we have no idea if we're going to see Silver Surfer or Galactus in the MCU, especially not in any type of reasonable time frame. We very well might, but this is one where it spiked a ton and maybe it deserved to come back down some because there isn't that news or anything around that character right now, unlike Moon Knight, where we know we have that character coming and we know we have a show coming for that character. So this one, I had estimated the price at $9,000. This was 20% below my estimate. The high sale for an 8.5 was actually $14,946 on June 10th. And I believe there was another $14,000 sale around there too. So there were a couple just huge sales when this book was just spiking like crazy earlier this year. So from its peak, it is down 52%. And so that's where that is going to hurt if you're the person that paid that almost $15,000 for this book. Yes, it might come back up to those types of valuations, but it's probably going to be a while, and you would almost certainly need Silver Surfer or Galactus to actually appear on screen or get some news about those characters. So that one, probably hurts for whoever bought those books, but down 52% from those highs, even with what I said about maybe books going up and shouldn't have as much, that's when it's starting to get down to some more reasonable prices. I mean, this is still an 8.5 of some first appearances of major characters. So it is still an important book, a high-grade Silver Age book. So that's where it's starting to get maybe a little more reasonable price to pick up. Now, the alternatives for this book, like issues 48 through 50, it's tough because those are important for the fact that they're just the first appearances of Galactus, Silver Surfer, that important trilogy when they meet the Fantastic Four, when all of that. So it's just one of the most iconic trilogies of all time in comics. So tough to replace that. One that you could go for is Silver Surfer #1. That's where you get the origin of Silver Surfer. That is also a very expensive book. So, I mean, these are popular characters. You're going to spend quite a bit of money for these books, regardless of condition. Even in low grades, you're going to spend a lot for Fantastic Four 48, 49, and Silver Surfer #1. Fantastic Four 50 is a little more affordable. You can get that one probably around $100 per grade point in the low to mid grades. But again, when it gets to higher grades, it gets much more expensive very quickly. So with these, I would just keep an eye on them, see if they continue to drop anymore or if this is around where they're going to start leveling off, and maybe it's the time to start picking these up. But I wouldn't expect big price spikes in these books unless we actually get some type of news around them. So not really holding my breath in the near term. All right, now number 8, this is a high sale. This is Submariner #1 with a CGC 9.2, sold for a record $2,640. Now, this book has really been on a roller coaster lately because we had that speculation news, whatever you want to call it, where people think that Submariner is going to be appearing as the villain in the next Black Panther movie. And now, the next Black Panther movie is a huge question mark. We've got the actress that played Shuri. It sounds like she is out of the MCU. And so who knows what's going to go on with that, because it had already started filming. Are they going to have to restart from scratch? Are they going to have to recast that character? No idea what the impact of that is going to be on the Black Panther franchise. And we don't even know if Submariner is actually a villain that's in that movie. So this one is a question mark, but it had spiked a lot earlier this year, and then it had fallen off some. And so it is very interesting to see this book hit that new high, that new record again. So I had estimated the price of this book at $2,000. This was 32% above my estimate. The last two sales were $1,800 and $2,040 on November 1st and 3rd. So it had really been hovering around that $2,000 mark. So this is a big sale. It had actually peaked at $2,599 back on May 16th. So this is just eking out a new high by $41. But that's one of those things that I've talked about that's significant, because you had that high back when everything else was peaking earlier this year, just records across the board. And then things really fell off, and everybody's saying, oh, prices are going to tank. You know, they were all too high and they'll never see those prices again. But then we've got books like this that are hitting those new highs again. We've got books that are returning to those new highs. And so definitely something where you have to really be aware of the specific books that you're buying. It's not the across the board peaks like we were having earlier this year, but there are specific books that are seeing those highs again. Now, this really is the alternative book, probably the most popular alternative book for his first Silver Age appearance in Fantastic Four #4, which is just exceedingly expensive. So this one is a little more affordable, but one option you could go for that's a little bit less expensive is Iron Man and Submariner #1. I've talked about this book before. This actually preceded Submariner #1 and Iron Man #1, but it was a one-shot, so it just doesn't tend to be as popular. It had spiked earlier this year because it seemed like a bunch of people were trying to make that the more popular book, but it's fallen off again. So a 9.2, same grade, recently sold on November 28th for $1,300. So you can get same grade for, give or take, about half the price. So definitely something where if Submariner #1 is a little too pricey, maybe look for Iron Man and Submariner #1. All right, now number 7. This is a low sale. This is Amazing Spider-Man #13 with a CGC 4.5 that sold for just $1,200. Now, this is another book like Submariner #1 that's really been on a roller coaster, because there were some people that were speculating that Mysterio was going to be a character that was in the next Spider-Man movie. As one of the original Sinister Six members, was he going to be included here? Did he fake his death? Do we get a multiverse version of him? Is that why Doctor Strange is acting weird? It's actually Mysterio. Lots of those different types of ideas were being tossed out. It doesn't seem like those are panning out. And so it does seem like the prices in this book are coming down some because of that. It is still an early Amazing Spider-Man villain, an important villain, and so it's never a bad book to own. It's just another one of these cases where if you're looking for this book as a, you know, kind of like an investment purpose, that kind of thing, just be aware of the prices that you're paying for it. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,500. This is 20% below that estimate. The record was actually $1,554 from August 22nd. It also had a $1,500 sale on October 1st. And a $1,425 sale on December 2nd. So it really had been hovering around that $1,500 mark. So it's very likely this person just got a good deal. You know, I mean, it is first appearance of Mysterio, Amazing Spider-Man, early Silver Age, not ever a really risky book to buy. But with that Spider-Man movie coming out, I would be cautious about paying up too much right now. I wouldn't be surprised if after the movie comes out, we see some drops in the prices of a lot of these Spider-Man books, at least in the short term. Now, Amazing Spider-Man, I said this a number of times, he is the king of comics. He really is. The keys for that character are never bad books to buy. They just, over time, generally seem to trend up. And so, a good book to buy regardless, but I think you could probably pick your point over the next month or so, 2 months, and you might find some discounts on a lot of those big Silver Age keys. Now, Mysterio also had some great other Silver Age covers, so you have some other options if you don't want to spend the $1,000, hundreds of dollars for that first appearance. Issue 66 and 67 are really good options. I like issue 66, much less expensive because it's quite a bit later in the Amazing Spider-Man run. A 9.2 of issue 66, for example, sold for just $480 on December 8th, and mid-grades you can get around $100. So a book that is much more affordable, cool Mysterio cover, definitely ones I would consider as an alternative to his first appearance. All right, now number 6 is a high sale. It's actually a book I've talked about in the past as an alternative book. This is Marvel Super Special number 16 with a CGC 9.6 that sold for $1,170. Now, this wasn't a record, but this was a high sale based on recent sales. And I think this is kind of a cool book to talk about because this is actually the first appearance of Yoda, of Boba Fett, whereas the books that get more attention are the first appearances in comic books, because this is a magazine that ultimately became issues 39 through 44 in the comics. Now, so it is a magazine-sized book. If you don't like magazine-sized slabs, then you don't want to buy this book. I think that's one of the things that does really hurt it. People generally tend to prefer the comic-sized slabs, but I had estimated the price of this book at $750. This was 56% above my estimate. Like I said, it wasn't a record. The record was actually $1,500 all the way back in January of this year when we had the last season of The Mandalorian going on. But it swung down as low as $679 in July. Also had a $736 sale on November 12th. So this was a really strong sale. It seems like it's making its stand around the $1,000 to $1,100 mark. There are a few sales that have been in that range. But this is one also that I don't think you really need an alternative for. It does drop in price significantly as you get outside of the really high grades. Even an 8.0 sold for just $130 on November 30th. And so with that, the big thing for me with this one is that first appearance of Boba Fett. That's the character that's really been super hot lately. You've got the Book of Boba Fett show coming out on Disney Plus soon. I'm sure that's what's starting to drive some of these sales, but that's where I would really be looking at this book. But try to get as high grade as possible if you can, but it does get expensive really quick as you get up into those really high 9.6, 9.8 grades. But like I said, even at an 8.0, which is a nice presenting copy, just $130. So definitely one to consider as an alternative to Boba Fett's first appearance in comics, as well as Yoda's first appearance in comics. All right, now number 5, this is a low sale. This is one where I actually had a low sale of a Golden Age book. You know, I've been talking about the strength that I'm seeing consistently in the Golden Age. This one was pretty weak. This is Flash Comics number 86 with a CGC 2.5 that sold for $4,800. Now, it's an unassuming cover. If you're not familiar with this book, you would probably not know what this book actually is. This is the first appearance of Black Canary. And it's got this strange, you know, Flash fighting a dinosaur cover for some reason. But this is one that, honestly, I did really want to bid on this one. This is an example of a book that you're not going to get a chance to get it for a good discount like this all that often. It's also a book that just doesn't sell all that often, especially when you've got these Golden Age first appearances. They're pretty few and far between, and so picking up Golden Age first appearances is never a bad bet. But as you can see here, you don't always get new highs. So that's something that I've talked about recently, where I've had some people say when I talk about the new highs in the Golden Age in some of my other videos, they think that, oh, just because they don't sell very often, that you always get new highs every time that those books sell. And that's just not the case. The record for this book was actually $7,000 back in 2017. And so this is down 31% from that record. I'd actually estimated the price at $6,500 because there was a $6,300 sale in 2019, and looking at some other sales that had happened around it. And so $4,800, really significant discount to what I think the fair market value is for this book, 26% below that $6,500 estimate. So again, though, just one of those things where you're not always going to get record prices for these Golden Age books. They don't always go up. You definitely have long periods of time where they're flat, where they trend down, and so it's not a guarantee that a Golden Age book is going to always go up. Now, this one, for alternatives, in the Golden Age, it's tough. You've got her first cover appearance in issue 92. That book is also extremely expensive. So what I would potentially go for is go all the way up into the late Silver Age, go to Justice League of America number 75. And I think this is a great alternative for Black Canary. It's late Silver Age, so it's much more affordable. You can get a mid-grade copy in the 5 to 7 range for $100 to 200 bucks. So if you like that character, she's kind of on the cover. You know, it's like her legs are on the cover. She's kind of on the cover there, and it's generally a pretty popular book, but much more affordable than what you're going to be paying for this Golden Age first appearance. All right, now number 4, this is a high sale, and this is one I thought was pretty interesting. So this is Rangers Comics number 14. This is a raw book. This was graded by Heritage as a 4.5, sold for $2,880. Now, there are 2 reasons that I found this sale interesting. One is that this is the first time I've seen in these sales that Heritage is selling the Promise Collection books raw. This was a Promise Collection book. That's what it was labeled as in the listing. And I'm not real sure how I feel about that, because I don't know what happens if you wanted to get that book graded by CGC. Are they going to give you that Promise Collection label, or is it just going to be some other book? Because I've bought a Promise Collection book. It didn't come with any certificate of authenticity, anything like that. The Promise Collection books don't have any consistent marks on them, where you have some other pedigrees where they have very consistent markings that are on the cover or on the interior that people recognize as that pedigree. And so if you submit those books, you can get that book pedigreed as that. I don't know how that works here. I don't know if you bought this book and then you send the listing in with it to CGC, are they going to give you that Promise Collection label? Or the fact that now you have this, that you have that break in the chain of ownership, is there nothing that says that that book is now officially a Promise Collection book? Especially because you can tell this book has a spine roll on it. You would certainly get this book pressed before you would send it in. So now it's going to look a little different from what the picture shows on Heritage's site. And so that's something that I'm not sure how that plays out in getting that book graded. But second reason that I really liked seeing this book sell for this is because I just bought a copy of this book in a CBCS 4.0, and I paid a lot less than $2,800. And so that was an example of where, you know, picking up that book with the CBCS case, that's one thing I've talked about. I buy CBCS, I buy CGC, but with CBCS, I'm a little pickier usually, and it's usually for books that are really rare Golden Age books. And this is an example of one of those. This is on the Gerber Scarcity Index. This is a 7. It is a rare book. It's also just a pretty crazy World War II cover. You've got this woman who, she's not just chained down to where she's being beheaded. They've also got her hair. Like, if you look at her hair is bolted down to the ground. Like, it's a pretty creepy, crazy level of detail on this cover. But this is a Japanese World War II cover. You can see the Japanese flag on the guy's belt who's going to do the beheading. And so that's one of the things that drives the value for these books. Early Rangers comics, you know, pretty violent bondage, good girl art type cover, and as well as a World War II era cover. I believe this one's 1943. Now, a 5.0, a graded 5.0, just sold in August for $1,560. So that's why this was a huge sale. $2,880 for a raw 4.5. Now, it's possible, this book looks pretty nice. It's possible it could get higher than a 4.5, but like I said, even at a 5.0, $1,560 was the price. So I had estimated the value of this book at $1,500. This was 92% above my estimate. And this was a tricky one for me because I wasn't really sure how to treat a raw Promise Collection book, because I don't know what's actually going to happen if you try to submit that one for grading. But regardless, with that 5.0 sale that sold recently, this was 85% above that 5.0 sale. So huge record sale regardless. Now, alternatives, Rangers Comics has a pretty long run, but the ones that are kind of these World War II era bondage cover, good girl art type covers, they tend to go for quite a bit more. They are expensive, but if you keep your eyes open, you can get a chance to pick them up. Look for deals on things like I did, looking at a CBCS book where people are overlooking that, and maybe you can find some discounts. But these are not common books. You do not see them come up for sale very often, and so you do really have to keep your eyes open, and you can't be picky about the grading service that was used for the book with books like this. All right, now number 3, this is a low sale. This was Thor number 165, also raw. This was a 7.0 a raw graded 7.0 that sold for $552. Now, this is just another example of don't buy into the teeth of a price spike around some announcement that happens with a movie or with a show. Because this is the first appearance, or the first full appearance of him, or Adam Warlock. He has his first cameo in Fantastic Four 67. This is where you get that first full appearance. And once this character was confirmed in the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie, all of those keys around this character just spiked like crazy over that very short period of time. But they're definitely coming back down. And so that's when you want to watch these books, because I guarantee you that these books will spike again when we see this character either on screen or in a trailer. They will. It happens every time. And so this is the type of book that you'll want to watch for, that you have to take advantage of those spikes if that's what your goal is with these books. If you're trying to buy and sell these books based on speculation, you buy them when the news is minimal on them, and you sell into the news. You can't just keep holding and hope that it just keeps going up. You sell into the news, then they'll drop again, and then you can buy them again. And that is what's happening here. Definitely books that I'll be watching for to pick up, like Fantastic Four 67, Marvel Premiere 1, Thor 165, Strange Tales 178, Warlock 1. Those books that are all relatively solid keys around this character. As they come back down, pick them up, and they will spike again when Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is coming out. Guarantee it. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $800, so this was 31% below my estimate. The 7.0 actually peaked at $1,650 right when that news broke. And now the lowest recent sale was all the way back on November 14th, was $969, but it seems like they've been trending even lower, which is why I estimated it at $800. And that's because I back out things like grading fees, shipping, that kind of thing when I'm estimating the price of a raw book. Now, I already mentioned the alternatives for this. You've got Fantastic Four 67, Marvel Premiere #1, Strange Tales 178, Warlock #1. All great options, lots of different price points across the Silver and the Bronze Age. I really do think Thor 165 is the best book for this character. Marvel Premiere #1 is #2, if you want those great cover appearances for that character. So books to just monitor those prices, see if they drop. Don't be afraid to pick them up when they're at those discounted prices, and then you've got to be ready to sell them when you've got that trailer that comes out. That's when you're going to maximize your return on these books. All right, now #2, this is the most surprising high sale. This one's a little weird. So I thought this one was a pretty cool book. I wanted to talk about this book. This is Blazing Comics #5, but this has a variant interior. It doesn't have the actual interior of Blazing Comics #5. This was a CGC 7.0 that sold for $4,080. Now, this did not sell for $4,080 because it was a Blazing Comics #5 that literally nobody really cares about. It's not really a book that many people are probably looking for. For whatever reason, I don't really know the history behind it. If somebody wants to tell me in the comments if they know, great. But Blazing Comics #5 had what are called variant interiors. They had interiors that were other than the actual Blazing Comics #5. And in this case, it was Detective Comics #168. If you're not familiar with that book, that is the first appearance of the Red Hood, a huge, huge Golden Age key. Just one of the bigger ones that's out there. And so this is a book that is very difficult to price, obviously, because nobody's buying it really for the cover or anything. You're buying it for the interior, but you can't actually see the interior. so it's a very strange one. And so do you actually call it the first appearance of the Red Hood? Because it's got the interior that's the first appearance of the Red Hood, but it's got a cover that isn't. And so the way that I looked at it was, I looked at it like it was a coverless copy of Detective Comics #168. And coverless copies have sold between $1,780 and $2,500, all within the year 2020. And the most recent sale was $1,676 on December 17th of 2020. So I priced it at $1,700 because the way I look at it is, it's almost worse than a coverless copy, because at least with a coverless copy, that opening splash page is a great picture of the Red Hood, something cool that you could look at, when it's slabbed. Whereas with this, all you're really getting is the little note that says this is an interior of Detective Comics. You don't really care if the exterior is a 7.0, a 9.8, a 4.0, a 1.0. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that interior, and so I priced it like a coverless book. And this was 140% above that estimate. I mean, $4,080. And so someone paid a real big premium for the uniqueness that goes with this being this variant interior, outside of just the fact that effectively you could tear off that cover and use it to make a married copy or something like that of Detective Comics 168 if you had a cover of that book. Or maybe they do have a cover of it, and so they're willing to pay whatever price they could to get it, so that maybe their goal ultimately is to crack that book out, take off the cover, and then use it to marry with a Detective Comics 168 cover. I have no idea what the plans are with whoever bought that book. But I thought this was a pretty unique one, a cool one, a big sale. Definitely not a book that there's an alternative for, because this is what it is. It's a very unique one-off type situation where you've got this variant interior of a huge Golden Age key that has a different cover on top of it. But this was a big sale above what coverless copies have sold for, so I thought it was a huge, interesting record to talk about regardless. All right, now number one, this was the most surprising low sale, and this was Daredevil number 16 with a CGC 6.5 that sold for just $336. And I always think it's interesting when you have these low sales that happen around when you've got some big news with that character, because we just had an announcement that it was confirmed that Charlie Cox is coming back to play Daredevil in the MCU. We don't know exactly when he's going to show up. We don't know if he'll appear in the Spider-Man movie, if he's going to be in something else, but we know he's coming. We know he's a character that is now set to be in the MCU, but we have this key around Daredevil that then sells for a pretty big discount to recent prices. And if you're not familiar with this book, what this is this is actually the first time that John Romita drew Spider-Man. And so that's what makes this one a key. It's the first time one of the most iconic Spider-Man artists drew Spider-Man in a comic. Now, he then switched over to the Amazing Spider-Man run, but I had estimated the price of this book at $500. This was the record in that book, but it happened very recently, both the 10th and 19th of November, so it seemed like a pretty consistent price point for that book. This was 33% below that estimate. And so do I think this book is trending down? No. If anything, I think this book will likely be trending up, especially with that news. And so this person probably got a great deal, but just one of those examples where it's important to keep your eyes open. You can find deals anywhere, whether it's on Heritage, eBay, Hakes, Comic Link, Comic Connect. There are deals out there to be found. If you're patient and you watch just a lot of books, you can find them. Now, this is one that you can't really have an alternative for the first time that somebody draws a character. That's important for that reason. This isn't important for any type of first appearance or anything like that. But what you could do is you could go to the first time that he draws him in the Amazing Spider-Man run, which is in Amazing Spider-Man number 39. It's also a great Green Goblin cover, and so that is an alternative, but it's actually a more expensive alternative, so it depends what book you want, if you prefer to have the Amazing Spider-Man run or the Daredevil run. So the same 6.5 sold on December 2nd for $550, so a little bit above what I have this book really as kind of the fair market value, around $500. Peaked at $770 in September, so it is down a little bit, it seems, since then. So something to consider if you want that first time that John Romita drew Spider-Man in Spider-Man, go for Amazing Spider-Man number 39. If you want that first time he drew him just in comics, Daredevil number 16 is the book to get. It's not a crazy high price point, especially as you get down into lower and lower grades, so definitely a book that you can pick up for a few $100, $100 to $300 in those lower grades. As it gets into the mid grades, you can see it gets a little bit more expensive, you know, around $500 for a 6.5, and as you get into higher and higher grades, obviously much more expensive. But cool book. I think it's interesting getting those books where it's the first time an artist draws a character. Those are always fun, unique keys to pick up. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. This was my top 10 surprising sales. I hope you saw some cool books, some interesting books that maybe you haven't seen before, like that Blazing Comics #5. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.